Growing up, my sister Claire was always the golden child. You didn't need to be in our family for more than 5 minutes to feel it. She was the one with the big smile, the loud laugh, the straight-A report cards. Always the center of attention whether she tried to be or not. And me. I was the quiet one in the corner, scribbling in a sketchbook or tinkering with some weird coding project I'd found online. Our parents never outright said they loved her more, but it was in the little things. When Claire talked about wanting to be a lawyer, they lit up like she'd announced she was becoming royalty. When I mentioned wanting to study digital art or maybe build a gaming app, they looked concerned, confused, disappointed maybe. They didn't get it, and they didn't really try to. Claire was conventionally beautiful. She knew how to talk to people, how to charm a room, how to dress like she belonged on the cover of a college brochure. She had this natural magnetism, and I could never compete with that. Not that I tried. I liked my quiet. I liked figuring out problems on my laptop at 2 a.m. or designing imaginary cities on graph paper. That wasn't impressive in the kind of family I came from. From an early age, Claire loved to brag. About her grades, her popularity, her internships, her friends' rich parents. And somewhere along the way, that bragging started to come at my expense. She'd say things like, "Not everyone has to be successful, you know," while looking straight at me with that sugary smile. Or, "Some people just aren't built for the real world," after I'd mentioned a freelance project I was working on. I learned to keep things to myself. I stopped trying to explain what I was building, or why I didn't want a real job in an office like she had. My success didn't look like hers, and in our family that meant it wasn't real. But the thing about being underestimated your whole life teaches you how to move quietly, how to build in silence, how to let people think you've failed, until they're suddenly forced to see what you've really become. And Claire. She was about to learn that lesson in the most unexpected way. Word count. 650 first-person female narrative. Claire's graduation was exactly what you'd expect. An event. The whole family flew in, dressed to the nines, and posed with her for what felt like 1,000 photos. She graduated with honors, of course. Double major. Internships with big names. And before she'd even walked across the stage, she'd already accepted a job offer at a top-tier PR firm in New York. My parents couldn't stop beaming. My aunts cried. My uncle toasted to the future CEO of America. And me. I sat quietly in the second row, smiling for the photos, clapping when I was supposed to, and counting down the minutes until I could go back to my hotel room and breathe. I graduated a year later. No honors, no celebration. I didn't even walk across the stage. I didn't see the point. I had already made up my mind. I wasn't going to chase someone else's version of success. I wanted to build something of my own. Something that actually meant something to me. I started freelancing. At first it was just small gigs, graphic design, some web development here and there. I lived on cheap ramen and second-hand furniture in a tiny apartment above a laundromat. Some nights I cried out of frustration. Other nights I didn't sleep at all, glued to my screen debugging lines of code I barely understood. It was hard, but it was mine. Claire, on the other hand, was thriving, at least on the surface. She posted photos from her office with skyline views, drinks with coworkers in Midtown, weekend trips to the Hamptons. At every family event she was a walking LinkedIn update. She'd toss in little comments like, "I just had coffee with our VP. He said I'm one of our rising stars." Then she'd glance at me and smile like I was an inside joke she wasn't going to explain. She loved telling everyone I was still figuring things out. Once, I overheard her telling one of our cousins at Thanksgiving, "She's not really working right now. Just, trying stuff. She's kind of drifting, honestly." She laughed. "I guess the tech world isn't as easy as she thought it would be. Poor thing. I just hope she lands on her feet." Stung. Not just the words, but how easily everyone accepted them as truth. What they didn't know, what she didn't know, was that I had already landed. I was building something real, something solid. It wasn't glamorous yet, but it was growing. I had my first retainer client. Then my second. I brought on a virtual assistant, then a developer. I reinvested everything I made. I wasn't posting about it. I wasn't bragging. I was building in the shadows while she danced in the spotlight. And I didn't mind her talk. Let her believe I was failing. Because deep down I was already starting to realize the best kind of success is the kind no one sees coming. It happened at my cousin Emily's wedding. The kind of family gathering where everyone's dressed a little too formally, where champagne flows too easily, and where small talk is the main sport. I hadn't planned on staying long, but I came out of obligation, and maybe a tiny bit of hope that things with Claire might be different. That maybe, just maybe, we could just be sisters again for one night. I should have known better. The reception was in full swing when I found myself cornered at a cocktail table with Claire, two of our aunts, and a few extended cousins. Claire, of course, was in her element, glass of rose in hand, perfectly styled dress, laughing just a little too loudly. Someone asked, "So, what have you girls been up to these days?" I opened my mouth ready to answer, but Claire beat me to it. "Oh, you know," she said with that breezy, polished voice she always used when she was about to go for blood. "I've been slammed with client work. We just launched this major campaign for a global brand. I was on calls with their executive team for weeks. Honestly, it's exhausting being in demand all the time. The ants oot are not on cue." Then Claire turned to me and smiled sweetly, that fake innocence layered with venom. "And you? Still dabbling in that little online thing you were doing? What was it again, freelancing? Or consulting?" I nodded, keeping my face neutral. "Yeah. It's going well." Claire laughed, as if I'd told a joke. "Oh, that's cute. Well, not everyone can be successful in the traditional sense, right? Some people just take a little longer to find their path. Or whatever." There was a pause. The kind that follows a punch that no one expected to land so hard. Few people chuckled nervously. One cousin cleared her throat and changed the subject. But the damage was done. I looked at my parents across the room. My dad met my eyes, then looked away. My mom was laughing at something Claire's old babysitter had said. Neither of them had heard. Or if they had, they weren't going to say a word. I felt heat rush up my neck. Not anger, humiliation. That horrible sting that makes your throat tighten and your chest ache all at once. But I didn't respond. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I excused myself, walked out into the cool night air, and sat on the edge of the stone steps leading away from the venue. For a few minutes, I just stared up at the sky, letting the cold bite into my skin, grounding me. And in that silence, something settled inside me. Not resentment, but clarity. Claire could keep her spotlight, her carefully curated image, her shiny little digs. I didn't need to fight her. I didn't need to defend myself to people who never really saw me in the first place. But I made myself a quiet promise that night. Let them laugh now. Someday they'd choke on their own surprise. After that wedding, I stopped attending family events for a while. Not out of spite, but self-preservation. I needed the space to breathe, to build, to focus without the weight of eyes that only saw failure. While Claire was chasing promotions and praise, I was busy building something real. It started small. A few design projects turned into regular clients. I learned to write clean code, design intuitive user experiences, and build entire branding packages for startups that didn't have time or budget for a big agency. I reinvested everything I made into better equipment, online courses, and eventually people. Within 2 years, I wasn't freelancing anymore. I was running a digital consultancy. Quietly, without fanfare, I hired my first 2 developers and a project manager. I rebranded, launched a real website, and landed my first 6-figure client, a fintech startup in Berlin. From there, things moved fast. Word of mouth, referrals, glowing testimonials. Suddenly, I had a calendar booked months in advance, clients in 5 different time zones, and a waiting list for new projects. I never posted about it. Never bragged. Not because I wasn't proud, but because I didn't need to prove anything anymore. The people who mattered knew. My team respected me. My clients trusted me. That was enough. I started traveling, not to escape but to live. I worked from quiet cafes in Lisbon, sunlit apartments in Mexico City, Rooftop lounges in Seoul. I built routines that brought me joy. Mornings filled with movement and coffee. Evenings where I could close my laptop and feel like I had nothing left to prove. Eventually I bought a home. A beautiful light-filled space tucked away in the hills, with enough room for a home office, a garden, and a life. I designed every corner of it myself, intentionally, softly, without excess. I didn't invite the family to see it. I didn't need the commentary. It was mine. That was enough. And I grew personally too. Therapy helped me untangle the knots that had been there since childhood. I started journaling, reading again. I joined communities with people who thought like me, built like me, and didn't need applause to feel worthy. Slowly, I made peace with being misunderstood. Because that's the thing about quiet success. It doesn't beg to be seen. It doesn't need to shout over the noise. It just moves steadily, deliberately, until one day it stands taller than anyone expected. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of Claire online. Another work event, another dinner party, another quote about hustle culture and winning. She was still chasing the same high. Still mistaking noise for meaning. Still pretending the race hadn't changed. And I had already crossed a finish line she didn't even know existed. I didn't need to say a word. I didn't need to correct her narrative. I knew what I'd built and who I'd become. And that was more than enough. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning. I was sifting through emails, finishing up a proposal for a new client, when I saw the subject line. Application for Senior Brand Strategist. Claire, last name. Froze. At first I thought it had to be a coincidence. Claire wasn't exactly a rare name. But when I opened the attached resume, there she was. My sister in full professional glory. Her headshot. Her bold, bullet-pointed achievements. Her polished cover letter. Applying to my company. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. Felt surreal. Claire had no idea. She didn't recognize the agency name because I'd rebranded 2 years ago. It wasn't my personal name on the site. It was our business entity. A sleek, minimal brand that reflected my team's style more than mine. I wasn't the public face. I never wanted to be. Curiosity turned into something deeper as I clicked into her application record in our internal system. I could see the notes from the initial interview with HR. She was confident but somewhat guarded. They'd written. Seemed slightly desperate to impress. I opened up LinkedIn and searched her name. That's when it started to make sense. Her last company had done a massive downsizing 3 months earlier. They'd lost a major client. Half the team had been let go, including Claire. Since then, she'd been bouncing between freelance contracts, none of which had stuck. The perfectly curated posts had stopped. No photos of launch parties, no check-ins at rooftop bars. Just silence. I stared at her resume for a long time. It was good. Objectively solid. But I could read between the lines. The confidence wasn't what it once was. The cracks were there. Just small enough to miss if you didn't know where to look. And the irony. She was applying for a position on my brand strategy team. The same sister who once told people I had failed in life, was now hoping for a chance to work under my leadership. To rebuild her career in the very space she once mocked me for entering. I closed the document slowly and rubbed my temples. Didn't feel like revenge. It didn't feel like triumph. Just felt poetic. Of all the places she could have landed, of all the doors she could have knocked on, she'd unknowingly come to mine. And she was about to walk into a room where I sat at the head of the table. Still, I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I let the process continue. Let HR move her to the next round. Because I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to look across that interview table and see what the years had done to her, and what they had quietly built in me. The final interview was scheduled for Thursday morning, 10 a.m. sharp. My assistant sent me the calendar invite with a polite note. Final round with Claire, last name. Sitting in as requested. You'll be introduced as partner. Partner. Not founder. Not CEO. Just one of the leadership team. That was intentional. When Claire walked into the glass-walled conference room, she was smiling, confident in that performative corporate way. She wore her usual business outfit, a fitted blazer, pristine heels, and a sleek portfolio tucked under her arm. But then her eyes met mine, and she froze. For a split second, I watched her brain scramble to process what she was seeing. She blinked, her mouth parting slightly as if she might say something. Then she caught herself, forced a tight smile and straightened her posture. "Hi," she said, her voice a little too high, a little too strained. "I didn't expect to see you here." I smiled, nodding once. "Claire. Good to see you." She glanced at the other panelists, our hiring manager and creative director, clearly unsure of how much I'd told them, how much they knew. They didn't react. To them, I was just another partner attending a final round interview. The interview began. She launched into her rehearsed pitch. Past campaigns, performance metrics, leadership experience. She was polished, but her rhythm was off. Her eyes kept flicking toward me, gauging my reactions. Her sentences stumbled. Her hands fidgeted with her pen. At one point she actually said, "I'm really passionate about aligning creative vision with business growth," which I knew she'd never said before in her life. Claire didn't speak like that. She was trying to speak like me, but the words didn't fit in her mouth. I kept my expression neutral. Professional. Occasionally I jotted something down, though I wasn't taking real notes. I already knew how this would end. After 30 minutes, the hiring manager wrapped up. "Thanks so much, Claire. Any questions for us?" She looked at me again, hesitating. "I guess I'm just curious," she said slowly. "How involved are you in the company?" Smiled. "Involved enough." Her smile faltered just a bit. We stood, and I extended a hand. "Thanks, Claire. We'll be in touch." Her hand was cold when it met mine. She nodded, her eyes searching my face, maybe for a hint of how this really went, or for confirmation of what she still couldn't quite believe. She left the room with her back straight and her shoulders tight. But her steps weren't as sharp as when she came in. I watched her walk out. She still didn't know. Not really. Not yet. But soon she would. And when she did, it wouldn't be in a conference room or with an audience. It would be quiet, direct, and unforgettable. Just like the life she never saw coming. The call came that evening. I was sitting on my back patio, warm cup of tea in hand, watching the last streaks of sunlight slip below the trees. My phone buzzed, Claire's name lighting up the screen. For a moment I just stared at it. Then I picked up. "Hello." There was a pause. Then her voice cautious. "Hey. Can we talk?" I could hear the hesitation, the vulnerability. A tone I wasn't used to from her. "Sure," I said calmly. "Oh. I've been thinking about the interview," she began carefully. "And you were there. In a leadership seat. And now I'm wondering, how involved are you with the company really?" I took a quiet breath, then said it plainly. "I co-founded it." Silence. Full 5 seconds passed. Then another. "You co-founded it," she finally said, barely above a whisper. "Yes. Years ago." Another pause. "I don't understand. Why didn't you tell anyone?" I smiled, not smugly, just peacefully. "I never needed to." She was quiet again. I could almost hear the memories clicking into place. Family dinners where I said little. Her own comments echoing back to her in the silence. The job application she'd submitted without realizing who was behind the brand. "I feel stupid," she said. "I never knew. I thought you were still figuring things out." "You weren't the only one who thought that," I replied evenly. "But I wasn't. I've been building this for a long time. Just not loudly." "I'm sorry," she said after a long pause. "For everything I said. I was arrogant, mean. And honestly, I think I just didn't understand your world, so I judged it." "I know," I said. "And I appreciate the apology. But I'm not going to pretend it didn't hurt." She let out a soft sigh. "I get that." There was a silence between us. This time not heavy, just real. "Sometimes," I said finally, "those who say the least are doing the most." She let those words sit. I guess I needed to hear that, she admitted. More than once. I'm not angry, Claire, I said. But maybe now you understand why I stopped trying to prove anything. My work speaks for itself. Yeah, she said quietly. It really does. We said goodbye and I ended the call. No bitterness. No revenge. Just truth finally spoken. And that was more than enough. Claire didn't get the job. It wasn't personal. It was professional. Her qualifications were decent, but her ideas weren't aligned with where we were heading. She lacked the collaborative spirit we needed, and honestly there were better candidates. It wasn't about our past. It was about the present and the future of my company. I made sure the rejection email was respectful, constructive. HR handled it, but I reviewed it myself before it went out. She deserved kindness, even if she hadn't always shown me the same. A week later we had another family gathering, our parents' anniversary party. I almost didn't go, but something in me said it was time. When I walked in I felt it immediately. A shift. Claire was there, but this time she didn't command the room. She didn't toss out backhanded compliments or brag about things she barely cared about. She simply said, "Hey," and offered a small, genuine smile. She didn't mention the interview. Neither did I. My parents were suddenly full of praise. "Your cousin mentioned your company won an award." My dad asked, eyes wide. "We had no idea it was doing that well." My mom leaned in. "We saw your name on that podcast feature. You never told us." I nodded politely. I didn't need their validation, but I also didn't resent it. Not anymore. I wasn't the girl sitting in the corner with her sketchbook, desperate to be understood. I didn't crave applause. I had built a life that fulfilled me, piece by piece, without performance. As the evening wound down, I stood outside for a moment alone, watching the sky deepen into violet. I thought about everything. The silence I endured, the humiliation I swallowed, the years I spent quietly working while others underestimated me. And now I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to prove anything. Because I hadn't failed. I just succeeded on my own terms. I smiled to myself as the breeze stirred the hem of my dress. I didn't fail. I just didn't advertise my success. But when karma comes knocking, it usually has perfect timing.